My man, the former head coach of the Kansas Jayhawks, the former wide receivers coach at Texas A&M that broke my heart in 2012, which we're going to talk about in a minute, David Beaty. David, how we doing today, brother?
Oh, Tyler, I'm great, man. Thank you for having me on, man. It's an honor to be here with you. And before we get started, I've got a niece named Amberly Beatty, my brother's daughter, that somehow finds everything that has ever been done with me, particularly with the podcast. So I'm going to give her a quick shout. Amber.
Yeah, I like it. So we'll have another listener for the podcast, man. I'm fired up. We can
There
get
you
we get
go.
the family going. We'll be cranked up and go. Hey, before we get started, we're not going to talk about it much, but we got a lot of fans that are familiar with you that listen to our show. Me and my man DJ covered your deal this past season when you got vindicated from Kansas, and look, I wanted to say this, and I know we're not going to talk about it. I don't need to get sued or anything. I don't need anybody to get mad at me at
We don't
Kansas
want
or
you going
anything.
through that.
Yeah, but I want to say this on behalf of the coaches of America. I want to thank you for standing up for what was right. And I think a lot of coaches, as I think this is like the new mode of the ADs trying to get out of buyouts and everything else. And we talked about that. But I want to thank you on behalf of coaches for doing what was right and standing up and vindicating yourself and getting your name back. And I get pissed off because when it happens, it's a big media story, right? But when you get vindicated, nobody wants to cover it because they don't get enough clicks. But being vindicated, and I think on behalf of all coaches, I think all coaches should send you 3% of their check from here on out. What do you think about that?
Man, that's a good deal. Never thought of that, Tyler, but that's a
Hey,
pretty good idea, man. You need to be an agent. That's what you
I
need to do.
know. Hey, you should get like a 3% deal on all buyouts from here on out for because all schools are not going to mess with coaches anymore because of you standing. But it really was. It's big time, man, and you've been a big time. You're a guy that's in the business reputation of being just a great guy, a good players coach. I know you were a high school coach for a long time, which we'll talk about here in a second. But I'm going to start this thing off, okay? And I told you this yesterday. You were on the staff. I have 3 or 4 games in my career that kind of scar me a little bit from losses. And but most of them are big games, like the kick. I was at Alabama. We lost a kick six game. I still don't like talking about it, but I got a big scar there. It's probably the worst one. We got the Egg Bowl here a few years ago that got us fired. But then the one that really sticks out to me, besides that, like a regular season game, was 2012. We were here at Ole Miss. We were getting things rolling. We kind of on a little run there. We think we were like 3-2, and we're at home playing Texas A&M. And y'all had just beaten Alabama. Y'all had a squad. Okay, y'all had Johnny Mansell, Mike Evans. Y'all were loaded. And we had a. I'm going to take you back in time to let you know how deep my scar is. We had a 10-point lead with 7 minutes to go. Okay, and you get the ball. We got you back, in deep in the territory, and Johnny Manziel starts doing Johnny Manziel things, and he's running around, and we sack him in the end zone. Okay, and he tries to extend the ball out, and the referee marks it. The white hat marks it at like the half-yard line. All right, now that we're both gone, okay, I'm not at Ole Miss, and you're not at Texas A&M. Was that a safety?
I think it was a safety. Uh,
Thank you. We
I
were,
could have used one.
man.
I wasn't sure if he still had the ball in his hand either. I thought he might have fumbled it or something. But I couldn't believe it. I do know this on the next play, we were literally the nose of the football was on the end line, on the goal line there. So we were as far back as you could possibly
Yeah.
be. And I did think it was a safety myself.
So
But
my whole deal is when you go back and you watch the film and you could watch it, and we have different angles. Obviously, the fans know that we have different angles we watch than you see it on TV or whatever. But when he goes to extend that ball out, first of all, it didn't get out. Okay, but then he threw it.
mhm,
Okay, he let go of the ball, so at worst it should have been intentional grounding.
I
But they
agree.
mark
Yeah.
him they mark it so intentional grounding in the end zone is a safety. So that would put us up 12, getting the ball back with 6 minutes to go, which would put us in a good spot there. But instead, what happened on 3rd and 19? Johnny Manziel doing Johnny Manziel things, throws it up to Mike Evans. Okay, and Mike Evans just you talking about you got mossed, just went all over Sinquez. There may or may not have been a little push there, but you can get away with, I'm a receivers guy, so I'm okay with that. And makes like a 30 something yard catch. Then you gut us on a power play the next play, and then Manziel scrambles. 3 plays later, you're in the end zone, and so that changed the whole game. We went for it on 4th down, the following drive at about the 40-yard line, and then who I think was one of the most underrated guys in the league back then was Ryan Swope from that you had at receiver was a
Great
stud,
player.
and he catches a corner out and takes the lead. We actually drive back down, get to the 30, have a chance to kick a field goal to tie the game, and my man Bo uh, got stepped in front on 90-91 slant. So got us picked there about the 30, and that was the ball game. But that one scarred me because when you lose a 2-score lead that late in the game and had those advantages, I mean, uh, I'm sure that was great on your side though, huh?
I mean, man, I feel for you because I've been on both sides of it, and man, that was a very memorable game. Number one, because that team was full of the class. Y'all had a class of guys that y'all signed: the linebacker, the defensive tackle, uh, number 25, Purdue.
Cody Pruitt.
Pruitt, man, that guy
Yeah,
he's such an underrated player. That dude was such a good ball player.
he would knock you out. He was physical.
Man, y'all had a little just Watamoxcan nickel that played for y'all. This
Mike Hilton,
dude was a
he's still
beast.
playing.
I was going to say that I thought he was a major NFL football player, but y'all were loaded, and offensively, y'all were loaded with people as well. Uh, and that was our first year. We actually didn't really know too much about what we had really that first year. We weren't sure that we had enough talent to get. But those kids really did. They responded to Kevin and our staff, but that game was crazy. I'll never forget. We're in empty on that one play where we throw that touchdown. Well, we're in 3-by-2, so it's 3 to the field to the left and 2 to the right, and we are actually about to run quarterback draw, but y'all line up in man free. Are about to bring the house. Y'all wind up bringing 6, and Johnny sees it and he walks up to the line and he checks what we call 8, which is a flag drop on number 3. And as soon as I saw that, I knew that we had a chance there because y'all were playing inside leverage on number 3, and Ryan kind of slipped him on the edge and got to the corner, and Johnny dropped it in there. And man, and we beat you guys 2 years later at that place on a last-second field goal. I mean, we had some unbelievable plays, and I'll say this: I've been to a lot of places, Tyler, to play. Very, very fortunate in that regard. That was the hardest place that I felt like I ever had to play as a coach. It was
When this
so loud.
place, yeah, when this place is rocking, and I've said this before, and we have a lot of Ole Miss fans that listen. So, but I've said this before. When we came, I've been here on 2 different stops, right? So I came with Freeze. That was our first. That was my only season there was in 12, and then I went to Alabama after that. Then I came back with Matt, and I don't even remember 18, 19 years are starting to run together. All right. So, but the difference is when we came in, there was they hadn't won a game like an SEC game in forever, and
Right.
so they had a rough couple of years. And so when we started playing good, and we started out, I think we were like 3-2 when we played you guys that year. So it was a halfway point of the season. Every game, it didn't matter who we were playing, whether it was Central Arkansas, UTEP, Texas A&M, Vandy. It didn't matter who we were playing that year. That place was rocking.
Oh,
Okay, it was sold out and it was rocking. And then when I came back with Matt got the job, it was it was empty from the jump. It was just not the same juice. But when this place, and I tell people, and I've been and I was on the other sideline when they tore down the goalpost and beat us when we were at Alabama. When this place is rocking here,
wow.
it's a very difficult place to play. But when it's not rocking, it's not. It's just another stadium. So, um, but that's why I think a lot of times the coaches here they encourage the fans to show up because they're trying to get as much of advantage as they can get. So,
I mean, the
but
way that stadium is designed, it's almost like down in a little hole, and it's right on top of you, and it is really, really, really difficult place to play. Really cool environment for
yep.
sure.
All right, Coach. You and I have a similar background where you spent really the first 10 years of your coaching career in high school. And I had really my first full time job after I was a GA. I went back to high school and spent 4 years coaching high school level. And I know I got a ton out of it, but I was just curious to ask you, what did you learn kind of as a high school coach and being in that environment? What did you learn that you carried over into the college atmosphere, which is really completely different? People don't understand that. But what did you learn and you were able to take from high school level to the college level that helped you be successful?
Tyler, I mean, you've been through it. I think there's a couple things that stick out to me. Number one, I don't know how a guy can be a college head football coach without any head football coaching experience at all. It was such a blessing to be a head football coach in the state of Texas because having that experience and hiring and firing 32 coaches from top to bottom, which is way more than you have on a college staff.
Right.
But you are the secretary. You have to wear all the hats, right? So you have to do so much more as a high school head coach because you don't have the personnel that you have in college. So it takes an enormous amount of organization. The guys that I meet that are like you and I, that are high school guys that transition, I have met zero of them that are unorganized guys, right? They are
Right.
super organized because you have to be very mindful of your time. So I think, just being a head high school football coach and having to wear all those hats was very helpful for me when I was able to move into a head coaching position and actually go into the college game, because it made it easy because you had so many people to help you do the things that you used to have to do. And then I think the other thing that sticks out to me is, man, in high school, you got what comes to you, right? It's you have the players that live in your area for the most part. Now, there's some areas, some places that have recruits coming in, and that's changed. But when you and I were doing it, it was whoever lived there, that's who you got. And
Yeah.
you weren't going to crap another one. That's who you have. So you have to develop them, right? And development was such a big part of being a high school football coach, of being able to teach them how to do what they do, not what to do, but how to do it, right? I mean, we all are going to understand scheme and things, but how you get from point A to point B. Everybody's trying to get from point A to point B. To me, the ones that make it that are very successful are the ones that can really be detailed in how they teach kids to get from point A to point B. It's called technique, right? And you have to be very efficient doing that. And the other thing that sticks out with that is, in high school, you don't get another one, right? So we trained them all, right? From the freshman to the varsity. If we went through punt coverage, every single kid on the team learned a position. We'd be 8
Right.
deep at every spot.
Yeah.
You may be an O lineman. Quarterbacks were going to be punters, whether they liked it or not, because at some point they were going to quick kick. So they had to start learning as a freshman, right?
Yep.
Every offensive lineman learned how to deep snap. Everyone learned how to deep snap because we just never knew when we were going to need to get to that. Every offensive lineman learned how to snap because we never knew when we were going to need to get to another center, right? And you're not going to get another one, so you got to develop the ones you got. When I got to college, it was interesting because really you only kind of teach a couple of guys at each position, right? Particularly in special teams. And what I noticed that when it's really stuck out to me is, we're going into a situation where we're setting up for an onside kick return in a huge game, and the most key position guy is hurt, and his backup's hurt. So we have no one that's ever worked that before.
Yeah.
And we're on the sideline trying to tell this guy in 15 seconds what to do. And he's in the most prime spot. The whole season comes down to this. I mean, the world doesn't understand that, right? So
They don't. I've been in that situation before. It's not very good as a coach. I've been in that one before.
Gosh. I mean, and that happens regularly. You were with, I think you were with Jeff Banks and those guys at Alabama, or maybe he came out, and he's one of the best special teams guys I've ever been around in my life.
Yeah, he was right after me.
But and I kind of brought something to his attention. I was like, hey man, listen, we used to do this when I coached in high school. We had to be very efficient, but every year in 2 days in spring, I mean, at least 5 times a year, everybody took onside kicks. We learned how to take short hops. Everybody on our team, down to linemen, because it'd be fun for them. But we did a little rotation where, it'd be a little county fair where everybody learned to catch sky kicks and how to put your hand up. Everybody learned how to block the sun with their hand away from their eyes. Everybody learned how to recover onside kicks. Everybody learned how to do the little things because whenever that time came, we never wanted to be stuck without a guy that knew what to do, and we lose because of that, right? And one thing I have learned in college is, because of that, I've seen a lot more games lost than won because of some situations that maybe fans don't realize, hey, that guy never worked it. And they literally told him on the sideline, I need you to line up right here 2 yards outside that hash, and the ball comes there, just covered. Well, hey, that's not what the other guys have been trained to do for years on how to manage every little hop. So training them all, developing them, and understanding the value of developing and not ever throwing one away. When I first got to college ball, it was amazing how people were giving up on folks so quick. And I'm like, well, did you tell him? I mean, did you show him?
That's
or
right.
are you just seeing if he can do it, right? Now, I understand that at the pro level, but when you first go to college, I don't know about you, this is a great question for you, Tyler. It's very intimidating moving from the high school ranks to the college ranks until you get there, and then you realize they're just kids. I would almost assume it's probably the same when you get to the NFL. They still need to be taught. They need to be taught technique. They need to understand. And a lot of them haven't been taught a whole lot because some of them haven't had that level of coaching until they get there. But did
Yeah,
you experience that?
to bring up your point, the biggest thing, I had started in college, right? So I started and I was a GA. I was joke. I was a professional GA. I was there. I didn't think I was ever going to get a full-time job, right? And then I got married, and then I had to get a real job, and I interviewed everywhere in college, trying to get a job. Couldn't get a job, and so I was like, well, I'm just going to go coach high school ball. I said, I'm not going. I really wasn't interested in going. I'm not an ego guy. I didn't have to be in college just to say I was a college coach. So I'm going to coach high school. I'll be perfectly fine with that. So, but the thing that I got two really big things out of it, but I mean, a bunch of things, but the relationships with the kids, because I started in college and it was a very business-like approach. That's all you knew. And you knew how your college coaches were to you, and you knew how you were when you're a GA to relationships with kids. And it was a very businessy, puzzle piece kind of thing. And then when I went to high school, it's so personal, and it's all about relationships and really, and I learned that, and that helped me. And then when I went back to college as a receivers coach at Arkansas State, I really used that to my advantage, with my players and Hugh Freeze, who's had a great career and is at Liberty now. His big saying is you have to capture the hearts and minds of your players. And he was big on that, and it was what he started in high school as well, right? So it's really a lot of guys that, and you're the same way, because I know I've talked to a bunch of people. Your kids and motivating them, that was a big thing for me learning in high school. And and the same stuff you were just talking about, with prepping and things like that. And then the second thing I got, and I'm interested with you on this, but I told this story last week with Matt Wells, but I was able to see all these college coaches, because I was very fortunate. I had all these national recruits on my team, and so I was able to make you a good coach, by the way. But I saw the who's who of recruiters come in and out of my school, and I was able to see kind of how they approach the kids, what their kind of selling strategy was, and their mode, and what worked with the kids. Because I would ask the kids, "What do you think about that guy?" And
Right.
he's a jackass. I'm not talking to that guy anymore. And I'm like, okay, write notes. And so I kind of got this deal. And the funniest thing about it wasn't funny, is we had like everybody come through there, right? I mean, everybody. And the two that the kids liked the most out of all the schools, I'm talking about every school in America, came through, because we were in Mobile too, right? And so the Senior Bowl was there. So that week of the Senior Bowl, man, it was insane. I mean, there wasn't anything for us to have 7 or 8 head football coaches at our school at the same time. And we had like these rooms set up. It was pretty cool. But anyway, the two that stuck out the most to the kids that they really liked the most was Dan Hawkins when he was the head coach at Colorado,
Mm-hmm.
and Vic Cunning when he was the defensive coordinator at Clemson.
I can
Those
see
are the two that our kids responded to the best out of all the guys that came through there. That's who they liked the most. And I saw their approach, and it was, and I really, I mean, I didn't come up with it. I kind of stole it, and that's kind of how when I got back to college and started getting in recruiting, that's what I did. I just basically took stole their mojo and went out and kind of took their approach with kids, and it worked.
man.
So they were just, and it wasn't, because you've been in, you've seen 1,000 of them. They come in there with this used car salesman approach, like, "Hey man, how you doing? You're the greatest kid ever." And everybody does that. So you got to be different. And I was just honest with them. I rarely talk to them about football. We talk about life, and then all of a sudden that the kids remember you because, hey, he wasn't really trying to sell me on there. And he was real honest with me. He was straight up. He was in. They would say, "You're a real one." You can. And so you develop those relationships with the kids, and you end up getting them at the end of the day.
I mean, I say this and I don't mean it in a derogatory way, but kids are like dogs. They can smell
Everything
disingenuous,
they
right?
can.
Um, I mean, just watching the guys that came through, the Bobby Kennedys, I was in Texas. So Bobby Kennedy came through from Texas all the time. Those guys were just genuine guys, right? Genuinely good. Rich Rodriguez was a genuinely great guy. The kids
That's
loved
my
him when he
man.
came through. Hugh Freeze, another guy that came through. I mean, genuine guys that those guys got relationships with people, and very much like you. I mean, I always felt like players coming to your school, if you had to talk someone into coming to your place, I've
It won't
saw a
work.
lot of those. They don't work out, right? I mean, it's got to be they have to want to come there, right? So I think it's got to be a byproduct of the relationship that you have with them, right? The relationship and them coming is a byproduct of the relationships that they have with the coaches, as well as the feel for the school. So I mean, that's one of the
That's
things I've always heard about you is just your relationships and just the things that you've done, not just with high school guys, but with college guys all around the country. That's why you've had so many jobs at cool places.
you said something that reminded me. So I tell people all the time, like in recruiting, I tell them, I said, look, it's like a blind date, right? So if you go and ask everybody in this country, coach, did you ever have? I'm asking. I don't know. I really don't know this. I may be sticking my foot in my mouth when I say this, but did you ever go on a blind date with anybody over the course of your life?
Oh yeah,
Did
yeah,
it work out?
never.
Never works out, right? So I said that's how I was talking about. I said if I have to talk to you, I said when somebody sets you up on a blind date, they are one of your friends or somebody is trying to talk you into dating somebody, and you're not invested in it, okay? And so you go and very rarely, now sometimes they do, okay? It's not 100%, but very rarely does it work out. And
Right.
so I would tell recruits, if I have to talk you in, I don't want to have to talk you in. I can, I'm pretty good at it, but I don't want to have to talk you into coming somewhere wherever I was at. And
Right.
so I want to develop a relationship where the person was invested. And when they want to come and they're invested in it, that's when good things happen. And when I say good things happen, I told people all the time, don't judge me on signing day. Holler at me 5 years down the road how they turned out to be a good player. Because I can tell you, I got grilled. I mean, they grilled my eyes out here at Ole Miss about, well, y'all didn't sign this guy, and y'all didn't do this, and y'all signed this guy. He was a 3-star. Da, da, da. Well, they're not complaining now when they went to the Sugar Bowl. Nobody's
Right.
complaining.
That's right.
Nobody's saying, well, I can't. I mean, people were giving us grief about taking Nick Broker. Okay. Guy's going to be an NFL player. No, but they were complaining. He's been a 3-year starter, started as a freshman at left tackle in the SEC. But he was a 3-star when we took his commitment. Now, he didn't have any other offers, right? But then later on, Ohio State tried to come in late. Then all of a sudden, since Ohio State offered him, now y'all can take him. He's a good player.
That's right.
So but when kids are invested and they want to be there, they develop and they turn into good players because they care about being there and they're invested in it.
That's
Okay.
right.
It's like in a stock market. Okay. Do you know what the Walmart stock did yesterday?
I don't. I know it was around 140 something a couple of weeks ago. I don't know what it's at.
Yeah. But you know what? Because you don't have $1 million invested in it. If you had
That's
$1
right.
million in the Walmart stock market, you know what you would do? You'd be watching it every day.
That's right.
It's the same thing. If you're invested in something, you're going to care about it and you're going to develop. And that's life. That's everything. It's relationships. It's anything. If you're invested in it, you're going to do that. So, but if,
Tyler, I mean, I don't want to interrupt you, but I think we'd be remiss if I don't interject here that, taking a guy like Broker is a byproduct of having a head ball coach that trusts the fact that, man, we can't live in a perception world when you're talking about evaluating players. But
yeah,
like we live in these seasons, right? We've got to win in the fall, and then we've got to win in recruiting. That's
you
another
got to win all
season.
the time.
Win in that, and that's all perception driven, right?
Yep.
But perception gets a lot of people fired, right? And
It does.
hey, listen, I'm a Dallas Cowboy fan. I don't care why you're losing.
I'm sorry.
I just want you to win.
I'm
Right?
sorry.
I just want you to win. So I get it. I understand where it comes from. But the truth is, whenever you're actually evaluating, your head coach has got to be bought into the right guys, the right type
Yep.
of people, right? And for whoever you were working with at that time, whether it was Hugh or whatever, I mean, I credit that guy for trusting his staff and trusting people like you to know that we're bringing the right guys. And look, we may lose recruiting signing day, but we'll win in the fall when it really matters and really counts because we got the right guys here.
Yeah, I will say this, and I don't think I've said this publicly, but I'll go ahead and say it. I really don't care at this point in time, but I have told, I have told, people that are close to me, I know is how good our staff was this last time. We wasn't here long enough, but how the chemistry and the trust and the staff, and like we'll talk about Nick Broker. The first and this is what was different about our staff that of any staff I really worked on. A lot of people have their own agendas and things like that, but like I remember the first time I watched Nick Broker, I didn't like Nick Broker. The first time I watched him, and like Big Nail's offensive line coach, and he really like Big Nail loved him from day one, right? And Big was like, man, you need to watch this guy again, And so we watched it, and then after I started seeing some things, because you're not perfect. I tell people all the time, sometimes a kid gets better. I mean, the more I watch him and things like that, I see things. And once I met the kid, so he brought him down on a unofficial visit. And once I met the kid and I saw him in person, I'm like, yeah, I bet I see it. And so, but the thing that was awesome about our staff is nobody like got their butt hurt because of who got credit. You know what I mean? Nobody, like Bick really stood on the table for a broker early in the process. And by the end, and then we're all on the same page. You know what I'm saying? Like if Bick, you want him, you got to coach him. By gosh, I'm in too. Let's go. And it was all, and Snoop Connor, Derek Nix stood on the table for Snoop Connor, and Brendan Chapman, who he loves to talk about this one, he stood on the table for Snoop Connor, and it took us a while to come around on him because of his speed, right? But once the decision was made, we were all in on the same page, whether you really wanted him or you liked him or not. And that makes a special staff, man. And we were able to basically, instead of having one person say, this guy's a really good player, let's go get him, it was truly a collection of efforts to where, regardless, like if Bick didn't like the guy and if he didn't like Jeremy James and I love Jeremy James, and he's like, by gosh, well, let's go get him. If you feel that passionate about him, and I know I trust you, let's go get him. And we were just together. Does that make sense? Like it was
Tyler,
a
just for
special
the
staff.
listeners.
I hate that it went as short as it was. So I think we were going to do some good things. But you know how timetables work these days. You don't have, you don't have. I'll tell you this: if the portal would have been around like it is now, which we'll talk about in a minute, we could have done some damage in a hurry. But it is what it is. So,
People
hey, I
don't
got a question.
understand how hard that is to have that kind of synergy on a staff. To be
Yeah,
able to
it doesn't happen. I've been in
it's
20 something
rare.
years, and
There are so
it
many
doesn't happen.
There's
So
so
yeah,
many agendas. Let's just say you got 10 coaches on a staff, it just takes one guy
yep,
to disrupt everything. And man,
yep.
it's just very difficult. It really is. So man, and that's a tribute to you guys. That's why y'all recruited so well. Go ahead.
Well, it was. I guess it's a good thing that I got to experience it before I got out. But it was. I really. Yeah, it just sucks, man. That was one that I wish we could have kept for a couple of years. Like I think if we'd had that staff, and we had a good staff in 2012 too. I mean, I'm like those guys, but it was the best chemistry. You enjoyed going to work regardless of the grind. You enjoyed being around everybody. Everybody was
So
on the
hard to
same
find.
page. Communication was unbelievable.
You wait your whole staff, your whole career to be on a staff like that.
Yeah, and then you get one class in it. So congratulations. All right, so it's rare that we get. Hugh was on here. He's a receivers guy. I love talking to receiver guys. Okay, I played the position. I coached the position probably for the majority of my career. I coached quarterbacks too, but I'm a big receivers guy. That's probably where I felt the most comfortable coaching for sure. That I did most. But out of curiosity, what if in all of your career, who's the best wide receiver that you ever coached?
Man, I've been really blessed. I've had some.
Yes, you
really,
have.
really
That's why we're asking.
Golly, I tell you, most of the listeners are going to be familiar with Mike Evans, and
That's the one I think.
And I would have to say he's the best one, but he also works at it, right? Like Mike played 1 year of high school football. People don't realize that.
Really?
Redshirted. Him and Johnny both redshirted. He had not played it down, until we got there. So we didn't really know what we had, right? But he works at it. He's a good man. He is a great example of how you do anything is how you do everything. His production mimics how he does things with his life. I mean, and you see why some people are not successful. It's because there's demons that they're fighting. They can't put their focus in the right areas. Mike is a great example of that. Unbelievable player, unbelievably strong. I watched him take your corner and reach out with his left hand and put him behind him one time. He's such a strong guy.
He did me. He did. I got to go coach against him twice. The 2012 game where he did us dirty. But then, I was at Alabama. We got in 2013. We had the big. Y'all had beaten. I wasn't there, but y'all had beaten Alabama the year before in Tuscaloosa, and so it was like the second game of the year. It was like 497 degrees in College Station, 2:30 CBS. And I saw he went for like what 270 something in that game.
274, I think, something like
yeah,
that.
274, and we had put a corner, so Cyrus Jones was going to match up with. He was our best matchup, but Cyrus is short, okay, and Cyrus was like the first pick in the second round, so he's a good player, right?
Oh, great player.
But it was a bad matchup because of size, and so we put our longer corner and bigger corner Bradley Silva over there, and it was like we couldn't do anything about it. We I think we rotated every corner that we had at Alabama on him, and it wasn't like cheapy. It wasn't like he was blown coverages or anything like that. It was like hitches, breaking 16 tackles, spinning out and riding to the house. And I was like, well, I was like, what are we doing? And I mean, it was a shootout. I think we ended up winning, but it was like, I know the over hit that day. It was like 49-42 maybe or something like that.
Crazy game.
It
But
was
we
hot.
played
I
y'all
know
the
it
year
was hot.
before. We beat Alabama at Alabama, and in that game, I went back and watched that tape all year. We had run a bunch of 10-yard stops, right? We were a big stop team, and
Right.
y'all's corners were sitting on what I call the low hip, so they were playing the stop. So literally, they were knocking down all of our stop routes with Mike. Mike didn't have a really big game in that first game when we played at Alabama. And I was watching that tape, and I walked into Cliff Kingsbury's office, and I was like, bro, they're sitting on the low hip against us. They think we're going to run stops. We need to go vertical all day long and just go vert. I'm just telling you. And y'all were sitting on the low hip playing the stop routes, and that's why we were getting past you vertically, I think. And that's why he had such a big game, because we were able to kind of work some vertical stuff. But he was a great one. I tell you, Tyler, I had some other ones. I'd be remiss if I didn't tell you. There's a kid named Jared Dillard, my first year coaching at Rice. Jared tied Larry Fitzgerald's record for 19 straight games with a touchdown. He was 5'11", but he used to always say, "Coach, I'm 11'5" on game day." I mean, this dude was a freak show. I mean, unbelievable jumping ability. I think he broke the combine record for the vertical jump. And just unbelievable hands. Had one offer out of San Antonio. Owns almost every record there at Rice. Mike and those guys, Ryan Swope, another one at Texas A&M. Mike Evans, they still own every record. Another one that might be one of the best tool guys I ever had was a guy named Josh Reynolds.
Okay.
Josh played for us at Texas A&M.
Yeah,
he was
I know
a
him.
JUCO guy. We signed him really late out of Tyler Junior College, but he was long, unbelievable flexibility. Just played in the Super Bowl a couple years ago for the Rams. Got traded this year. I think he finished with the Lions. Terrific player. Here at KU, Desmond Briscoe still owns a ton of records. Kerry Meyer played quarterback for us here, moved to tight end, much like Ryan Swope, wound up breaking all kind of records. And then there's one other dude that sticks out to me, a guy named Darrell Walker, played for us at Texas A&M.
Yep.
He's actually approaching some of the records in the CFL right now.
He was a good player, man.
Terrific player. Really, really good. Man, we just very blessed. Travis Labhart. We played you guys, and at halftime, this is the game that we wind up kicking the field goal to win. You weren't there, I don't think. I think it was the next time we came.
13.
Right. And at halftime, the guy that was playing my H, he just wasn't producing at that point, right? And I went in and I've got all these 5 stars in this room of receivers. All these dudes are 4 and 5 stars, right? And there's a walk-on that we got off he was on the girls basketball scrimmage team. The boys practice the girls basketball team. And man, this dude just did nothing but do the right things and make plays every day in practice. And I'll never forget walking in at halftime. I was like, "Coach, I'm putting Travis in at H." And he's like, "Are you sure?" I said, "Coach, we'll be fine." He catches like 8 passes, 2 touchdowns in that game. He finishes the season. This was 6 games in. He finishes the season with 61 catches, 9 touchdowns, and becomes the kind of the go-to guy. We got Mike Evans. We've got Darrell Walker. We've got Malcolm Kennedy. We got all these dudes, and this guy winds up being the leading receiver that year. So just a bunch of great stories. I'm sure you've had them. Now, back at who were your best?
I mean, I'll tell my guys, and I tell them that I don't know if I'll ever be around another one. I mean, I've been around some good ones. I don't know if I'll ever be around another one as good as Amari Cooper. He's the one. I think he's kind of the unicorn. And then look, I've been around AJ Brown, DK Metcalf. I've been around some good ones. Definitely, Dante Moncrief is up there. And I had a kid.
Y'all had at Ole Miss.
Evan Ingram was a good player.
Great player.
I could go back to my Arkansas State days with Dwayne Frampton, J.D. McKissick still playing, Taylor Stockton, Allen Muse, all the way to, and then, was really fortunate when I was at South Alabama. I had a class. I had some good ones. I went 6 for 6 in recruiting. Then I got 6 dudes that can play, and they all panned out. So that makes it fun. But Quan Baker's playing for the Saints. Jalen Tolbert will go in the draft this year. He's probably the least talked about wide receiver in the country because he's at South Alabama, and he's probably the second. I would say, and I like the kid at Penn State, but just Jalen's probably a top 2 or 3 receiver in the country, and he's going to do some things. I mean, he had 2 straight 1,500-yard seat. I mean, he's the real deal. We
Yeah.
stole him at South Alabama, got him to stay at home. He got recruited, Michigan State, Vanderbilt. He was recruited out of high school, but wanted to stay at home and is a freak show, and really developed. I mean, he was talented and developed. So he's going to play in the Senior Bowl. His stock will go through the roof. He'll be probably a second, third round guy, I imagine, but he's going to be a really good pro. But yeah, Amari Cooper for me, I mean,
Having to play against him was a nightmare. Just as a receiver coach, watching him do the thing, it was easy. He was
yeah,
a
it's
man.
just
He was much like Johnny at the quarterback position. He was a man among boys at that position in receivers. He was just so fun to watch.
the thing that made him different than everybody is, one, he was talented, obviously, right? But his work ethic and competitive character, he was elite in everything. It wasn't like you get some guys that are uber talented that don't work hard, or it's not, they don't do the extra, you got some guys that work hard, aren't as talented. I mean, there's a 3-level deal here. Are you
Right.
talented? Do you work hard? And are you a competitive dude?
That's right.
And he was just elite of the elite in every category. I mean, he came to the work. I told the story on this
Physical.
podcast before. I mean, he come to the office at 7:30 in the morning every morning. He did not have a car. So he rode on the bus, like the school tram. I saw him going in the building the same time I went in the building. Okay. And I'm working there. And he would go in and work on his craft for 2 hours, whether those cone drills, jugs, whatever, work out. He would eat breakfast, go to class till noon, come back, get dressed for practice, and go in the room and watch film by himself until it's time for the position meeting. He'd go position meeting, practice. But he was a pro before it was a pro, and go to position meeting, practice. And then we'd have to kick him off the field at the end of the practice. I mean, this guy's like, you remember when like Catapult came out and they started doing all the geo tracking and things like that?
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, we had receivers in practice running, 8 miles in a practice. I mean, it was insane. He was running like 14, 15. He was almost doubling up every receiver every day because he would catch the hitch and sprint and routes on air and sprint to the end of the field. I mean, he had to, Billy Napier was coaching him too. Billy was had to take the guy and hey, listen, okay, let's calm down. Just, let's just keep you fresh for the whole year and to keep him from wearing down. But yeah, I mean, I know his pro career has been up and down, but dude, when they want to, he can get with it and be the best of all of them. You're a Cowboys fan, so you get to see it. But to me, he's kind of have there been guys that are having better pro careers? Sure. But from a college receiver, he's pretty good.
It's such a good deal to hear about guys. You want it for them, right? But as you and I know throughout our career, you can't make a kid be that. He either is or he isn't.
Right.
I mean, guys can improve that work ethic a little bit, but when they do it on their own, that's not a learned trait for most kids. They either are that or they're not. And I say it all the time. The one thing that scares me is somebody that's willing to do more than me. And to hear that story about Amari Cooper, that should be scary for you. If you're a receiver or you're a DB, he's willing to do more than you. Therefore, like I said, how you do anything, it's how you do everything. So when he's so focused on that, boy, that makes for a dangerous combination and a good player.
He was a Miami kid and he never went home. So he stayed in Tuscaloosa the whole time and didn't have a car and lived in the dorm the entire time that he played at Alabama.
That is
he never moved out. He's wired different. So, all right, we'll go switch gears here, Coach.
Sure.
Your favorite band you listen to? Who's your jam? Who you listen to?
Oh man, it's not even close. I mean, I am a huge, and you're probably going to call me a geek after this, but I'm a huge Florida Georgia Line fan. So
okay,
I saw him in Nashville about 8-9 years ago. We were going to a Luke Bryan concert. They're such great entertainers, and every song, whether you think you do or not. Their songs are very popular. They're great entertainers, and then I guess probably the newest one is Morgan Wallen. I think this guy's he's a really good artist. Very interesting personality.
He's
on
interesting.
the stage, but
yeah,
man, he is a very good artist, very talented guy. So who's yours? Give it to me.
All time Dave Matthews Band. I mean, if I'm listening to one song for the rest of my life, one band the rest of my life, I can jam to Dave Matthews all day long. Country music, I'm a big country music fan, but probably, and he's semi-recent, but Chris Stapleton I can listen to. I know every song that he's ever sang. I think he's phenomenal. But I like 90s country, old school country guy. But
Yeah.
Chris Stapleton kind of brings me back home a little bit with that. So I'm a big Chris Stapleton fan, country music wise. So yeah,
True country
I'm all over
music.
the place. I listen to rap. I listen to everything. I don't listen to the new rap. Okay, I don't do all that stuff. All right, I don't deal with the new rap. But if you throw me some Tupac or some Biggie or some Snoop, I can
Boy,
get with that. I don't do the new rap stuff. My kids do, and I don't understand it. So I tell them it's not. I mean, like it doesn't make any sense. So, but
we're
I
getting a
like
little
old school
older,
rap.
Tyler. We're getting a
Yeah,
little
I'm
older.
getting old. It's my whatever. I mean, I told him, but when I like now my 6 year old he'll jam to some Snoop with me. Now he actually he's 6 years old, and I get in trouble sometimes with the wife when I turn on I may turn on gin and juice or something on the in the car when we're driving, and she gets mad at me. It makes me turn it off. But my wife acts all innocent, right? She's like, I'm a mom now, I'm a wife, and all that stuff. But I can throw that on there, and she'll start jamming. She knows, and she, back when she reverts back to when we were like 2021, and my kids go, "Who is this person?" I said, "I've been trying to tell y'all. Y'all think I'm the crazy one because I haven't changed much since that age." But she's more sophisticated and bougie now, and so. But when she reverts back,
Oh
the
yeah.
kids don't recognize her. It kind of freaks them out a little bit. So,
That's
but
great.
anyway,
Hey,
I'm gonna
listen,
get
I
in
got
trouble for
one
that
more.
too, by the way, Dave. Just so you know. All right.
Oh,
Speaking of wives, what was the last honeydew your wife made you do?
oh man, I've had some time, so I've had quite the list, Tyler. Um, I would say stuff that I'm not qualified to do in any way, like the freestanding ice maker broke the other day, and
Ooh,
yeah, I mean, let's just say that you know I wound up actually having to call somebody after I screwed it up and spent a bunch of money. So that's how that usually plays out. And then now she wants me to paint the doors on the inside of the front door, and these are custom doors that are. I'm like, babe, I'm not sure I'm qualified for that. And she's like, well, you got time, you can look at it. So I'm sure I'm gonna mess that up, and we'll have to
YouTube
pay
it.
somebody to come fix it. And
Yeah,
YouTube is
YouTube it,
great.
man. YouTube teaches you all kinds of things. I YouTube and I've done anything, and of
Oh,
course my wife's
no
been
doubt.
picking on me. I'm terrible. I'm like the worst. I'm not a handyman. Okay, so
Oh,
I know my limits. I know what I don't know, and so if it gets too much, I'll just call somebody because I'm not. I have no help on that.
oh yeah. Our house is about, I don't know, 5, 6 years old now, so it's starting to have those things. So that list is quite long right now. And most of it involves some kind of paint type stuff, and I'm not very good at that.
Oh, yeah, I'm with you. All right, so we're
What
gonna move
about you?
on.
What's your latest? What's your latest? What Mama made you do?
I don't even know. So it's usually my wife is a school nurse here in Oxford, and so usually my honeydews require it's more with helping the kids get shut down and in the bed. Like she'll come home wore out and pissed off a little bit dealing with all this COVID stuff. So I get thrown. I got in trouble last night because I said it's one of those things where she says, "Can you do something?" And I'll be like, "Yeah, I'll do it in just a second." That's the wrong answer in my
Oh,
house. So as soon
oh
as I
yeah.
say I'll do it in just a second, it's like, "Fine, I'll do it." I said, "I'll do it. Just give me a second. Just give me a second." So, but yeah, that's usually I usually get in trouble. Like, so I'm trying to get better. I'm trying to work on it because I was terrible for all these years, and now that you're home and you're trying to like get back into, it's like trying to teach an old. I'm trying to
Right.
get used to it, and but yeah, it's been good though, man. I really enjoy it. So uh, even though she doesn't think I do sometimes. All right, moving on, and we got to get so the fans know I'm trying. We're gonna get through this, but we got something we're gonna get to here in a minute that I've been geeked out over for a long time. So, but I want to get your thoughts as a head coach. And we asked Matt last week, what are your thoughts on the transfer portal, and where it's at, and where it's going, all that stuff. What do you see? What's your general idea and thoughts on it?
Wow, I tell you what, it is it's obviously something that's very, very new, and it's evolving daily. We're starting to kind of get a little bit better understanding of what it's like, but I would describe it like this. I think it's a chaotic roulette wheel. And the reason I say that is because, man, it looks like your odds are good, but the truth of the matter is, for every one situation where we see of a kid that transfer and it works out, and he becomes the Kyler Murray that moves from A&M to Oklahoma, or any of these guys that are transferring, there's probably, I would say, 50 other kids that jumped in that portal and gave up a scholarship that paid everything, because Division One's just one kind of scholarship. It's full scholarship, And now they get cost of attendance. They got paid money, and now there's all kind of other things on top of it. But when you jump in that portal, they do not have to take you back, right? And
Right.
you've given that up. So for every one kid that we see that's transferred, that it's worked out, there are 50 that have given up that scholarship. And listen, there's not enough to go around, and they may not have anywhere to go. Anywhere.
That's my big thing. We talked about with Matt. Even the portal. Before the immediate eligibility rule came through, there were over 2/3 of the kids were not going anywhere. And as well as I do, a majority of those kids can't afford to go to college. Okay, football is the only way they're going. And you're talking about changing. And I guess where I get upset about it and the whole deal is, from a fan's perspective, you're like, yeah, we can go get us it's free agency. We can go get us a good player. But for coaches, we're not fans. Okay, we're not fans. We're more invested in the individual. Okay, or I may say that most of us are, not all of us, but most of us are. And you're affecting a kid. You're allowing and they're still kids. We can call it what they want to. They're still kids. Okay, and they're making emotional decisions for whatever reason. Sometimes people at home are getting in their ear or whatever it is, but they're making emotional decisions that's going to impact their life forever. Okay, because they're not going to be able to go to college. And so instead of going out and being a good citizen, they're going to go home and get in trouble or whatever it is, and it's infecting lives. And a lot of times they're the first person, and I want fans to know this, more times than not, these kids are first generation college students. Okay. And so you're not talking about changing the kid's life, about changing generations' life, their kids' life. And so it's just to see the negative. I do get the positive. I really do. I'm not saying that there's not good things that happen out of it. But sometimes when we make decisions, especially from an NCAA perspective, when we're making these decisions, we can't see the forest because the trees are in the way. And we don't, and we're generations of families because this kid can't afford to go to college. And it's just it's a sad deal on that aspect, and they got to do something. And I've told them
it's the law of unintended consequences. Like,
correct.
It sounds like a great deal to the fans, like it's the transfer portal. We got a Dr. Pepper commercial right now that glorifies it.
Yeah.
Right? The truth is, it's destroying lives.
Yeah.
For every one guy that it's working out for, there are 50 that have given their scholarship away, and now they have nowhere to go. I'm not talking about Division I. I'm talking about a guy maybe at a Division I Power 5 school. He doesn't have a Division II, a Division I AA, a Division III, an NAIA. He has nothing.
Right.
And it was because he thought that I should just jump in here and it'll work out for me. Well, no, that's not how it works. I mean, you better have something already pretty much done, or you could be left holding the bag. Listen, I checked the portal yesterday. I want to say there were over 600 kids still in it. Well, yesterday, I think, was about the last day for most people to start classes. So what kids and people and players and parents and fans don't understand is once that class starts, now the guys that are still in that portal, not only do they have to pay for school somewhere to try to get 12 hours to keep their eligibility, because if they don't keep their minimum number of hours they got to get, they're not eligible. Even if they can get something in the fall, they're ineligible.
Yeah.
Because now do they even have the money to go pay for 12 hours? Even at a community college, we're talking about a few $1,000s. Like you said, these are first generation guys, and most of these guys come to us with not a penny in their pocket. So that cost of attendance money is important because they do not have a penny in their pocket until they get there. And so when they're left with nothing, they don't realize what's going to happen to them. So I think it's the law of unintended consequences that, and I get it. I think it was more of a political decision than anything, because I don't think it's necessarily the best thing for us, but I do get it that there are some good things, like you said, that have happened as a result of it. But if we really did a study for every one kid that it's been positive, I bet you we would have 50 or more that it's been horrific for them.
Yeah. And hopefully they will, we get through that. I mean, I've said this 100 times. I got plenty of time on my hand now too, so I really don't, but I'll be glad. I would love since we're making all these changes to the NCAA, all right, there's plenty of coaches out there now. Like, let's get let's get Matt, let's get Kevin Steele, let's get some guys that know what they're talking about. and let's go and let's put a committee together of people that actually know what they're doing, that have been there. But when these rules and these things, I mean, again, these people have never coached or played a down of football or any sport in their life, and they're making like legislation, and they don't, and it sounds cool, but they don't even, and it's not their fault. They don't know, and
That's right.
they make decisions, and they don't have the understanding of what that decision, the consequences is going to be. One thing I learned from Coach Saban when I went there is he said, look, when you say the word consequence, you automatically think negative, right? He says, but what you don't understand is every positive, not just a negative decision that you make has a consequence. Every decision, period, that you make has a consequence. Some are good and some are bad, but the definition of a consequence is a result of an action. And so,
Right.
he hammered it in, and it's the same thing. They're trying to do right. I'm not saying that they're not trying to do right, but you do have to see the consequences when you make a decision. Okay, if I do this, then this is going to happen. If that happens, this, you have to see down the road to really determine, okay, this is a good thing, but we need to put, A, B, C, D, E in order to keep this from happening, and
Right.
and be proactive on the front end instead of being reactive.
Right.
And so that's always been my deal. But
God gave us free will
he did.
to make decisions, and those decisions they're going to have an effect, positive or negative, what we call consequences. And I tell kids all the time, God gave us free will, which basically meant, hey, just because you can doesn't mean you should.
That's right.
And the portal is this new age thing that makes kids, because now they can, man, it's not like that for everybody. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. You got to really think about what could happen if you make that decision. And a lot of people, like you said, that's emotional. They're not putting a lot of thought into it, and they just jump in there. And hopefully you're getting, got a lot of phone calls from buddies with sons that I'm able to go, hey, slam on the brakes real quick. Listen, let me tell you what happens when you do this. And that's the best thing to do, is to research it. But anyway, I didn't mean to go off on that tangent.
Oh, you're
but
good.
I just have strong feelings about it, and there's a lot of great things about it, like you said. But I do think there's a lot to be said for guys that stay with it and stay at a place. And man, it's the transfer portal is so difficult on coaches nowadays, because I mean, it's almost, man, I want to be careful here, but it's almost like, most of the colleges have become glorified junior colleges now, because, let's just say Baylor Zappi, or the Zappi kid, from Western
Oh,
Kentucky.
that's my guy.
Let's just say that he was not a senior, was not eligible, right?
Yeah.
So your guy plays too good, you could lose him. But that's your goal, is to help make him a good player, right?
Yeah. That's the catch 22. I got a bunch of buddies got a bunch of group of 5 jobs this year. Rich Rod gets a Jacksonville State job. They're moving to Conference USA. You got Mike McIntyre, went to FIU. John Summerall's at Troy. And then Kane Womack and I've been real good friends forever. He's at South Alabama. Hey, we go recruit these guys. And here's the crazy part is they're able, because of the portal, they're able to recruit a little bit better at a higher level, because these kids are left out there. And so they're getting like better players than they've been used to getting. He goes, what happens when they go? And he goes, it's a catch-22. I get this great player. He comes in here and tears it up, and I lose him to Alabama or whoever for NIL money. They're pissed off about it. And he goes, and then you go and you get portal guys. Well, you're getting third choice on portal guys.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You're skipping, you're not in the top level tier of portal guys when you're in a group of 5 level. You're getting good, players. Now they can't go anywhere, but you're not getting a top tier player. So he's like, you can get a better player if you recruit high school, but you're in danger of losing them. It's just, it's a mess, man. All right, Coach. So I called you yesterday. We were talking yesterday. Okay. And you gave me some information yesterday. We were just talking about, things to have you on, And I lost sleep last night. I saved this for the end of the podcast. Okay. I lost sleep last night. Told me a story. I think one person, this is crazy to me. Okay. One person that I know of has written about this in your entire career. Like, this is the most fascinating thing I think I've talked about on this podcast since. And I was messing with you, and I said, hey, I'm crazy. I like to talk about ghosts and aliens and conspiracy theories. And then you let me know your connection to, I wouldn't even say arguably, one conspiracy theory in the history of the United States of America. Okay. I'm talking, so we're fixing to have, this may be a 17-hour podcast because I have never prepared more for an interview like I prepared after you told me this last night. So, your dad. Okay. So, let's talk about your dad and kind of Buford Lee Beaty. And let's talk a little bit about, tell the home visit fans who your dad was and what his connection is to the largest conspiracy theory in the history of the United States of America. Go ahead.
Right. So
Like how I teed that up for you?
yeah, it's nice. I've got a twin brother, and uh, my mom had us late in life. She was 42. My dad was 44.
Okay.
We were complete accidents, and we were twins, and we had synchronized heartbeats. There were no ultrasounds, so we didn't. My mom didn't even know she was having twins. Neither did my dad. My dad
Surprise.
was at work. My mom went into labor, um, and he wasn't even there. My dad was a Dallas police officer. Okay, so he wasn't there. Long story short, we had two kiddos. My mom had two kiddos, me and my twin brother, and she was so tired. My dad wasn't there to help, so we didn't even get middle names. So I don't have a middle name, and my brother does it. She just took the name and split it in half, and gave me David and gave him Lou because she was just beat when she didn't realize she was having twins, and Lou came an hour later. But it was really because my dad wasn't there. She always talks about that we didn't have middle names because my dad wasn't there because he was a police officer, a Dallas police officer. But what you're talking about is my dad probably the most famous thing about my dad is he is in all of the pictures. He is actually in the basement of the Dallas Police Department, and he's in the picture where Jack Ruby is shooting Lee Harvey Oswald, and he's one of the police officers that actually, you know, caught him when they put him on the gurney there. I think you've read the Warren report.
I watched it. I watched the video last night. I saw him. He helped put him on the gurney.
That's right. You know, I don't know if it's in the Warren report, but there was you know, my mom always told us just a couple of things, but and we'll talk about this more. But yes, he was there. He was present, and he was friends with Jack Ruby. All of them were. Jack Ruby owned what they called joints back then, which were kind of gentlemen's clubs and things like that. But all the
joints, they were joints. They were joints.
I think he called them juke joints or something like that. I
Yeah.
can't remember exactly. But anyway, long story short, they were all buddies with him. And my mom says all the time that, you know, she's like, "How did Jack get down there?" And he always said, "Look, nobody would have thought anything about that. Jack was always down there. He was, I mean, he wouldn't have been out of the ordinary. Jack was part of our people. He was just part of us, right?" And so that's how he gained access down there. I mean, he literally said hello to people on the way down before he shot him. So pretty interesting deal. Point in time there. He actually knew Tibbetts that got shot and killed. I think that might have been in the Warren report. He knew him. But really interesting stuff. But my mother just passed away. She just died. She was 94 years old. And literally up until about a month before she died, she reinforced this. But she said this from the time we were little kids all the way until the very end. "Baby, if anybody ever asked you, there was only one shooter. That's all we were ever told, and that's all we were ever supposed to say." And you know more about this really than I do. We just were trained not to really think or talk about it very much, which was pretty interesting.
So I don't know. I don't think I have on the podcast. We talk about, we get on here. We'd like to have a good time, but me personally, okay, this is like, so when I was a kid, okay, and I can't remember if I was in seventh, eighth, ninth grade. I did a whole like science fair and all that stuff. Like I built a model of Dealey Plaza, okay, and I researched this assassination, and like I've been fascinated with this thing since I would say. And I was trying to think back. I think it was like the 25, like 1988, right? So like there was something on TV, and I'm sitting there. I'm 11 years old, and I was real fascinated. And the movie comes out by Oliver Stone in '91. And that just kind of reemphasized it with me. So I'm sitting there time I'm 14, 15 years old, whatever it was. And then I've just been fascinated year, around November 22nd, every single year, there's a show on or whatever. And then last year, Oliver Stone came back and, they've been releasing information, about the about the all the files of this, and there's been these committees, the assassination committees, have been put together over the years to kind of go back and try to find the truth. And they're originally supposed to release all the documents by 2029, right? So then they come back, and then they would release documents and be some of the information we blacked out with permanent marker or whatever. But as information gets released and they in the National Archives, you just got to go in there, and it's a ton of information that not one person can go in there and just find out overnight. And there's so many things. But as you find out, this show that's on, I got it on Amazon. I think it's on Showtime. I don't know, but there was a one called JFK Revisited, and it's a 2-hour movie. And if you are a conspiracy theory guy and you like the JFK stuff, this was like, I mean, there's so much stuff that there's no way. As I've gotten older, come on, man. I mean, we all know that something happened. Why won't they tell us? I mean, I think because, and why aren't they releasing information? They're either one of two things. They're waiting for people to die that was involved, so they're not involved in the deal. Or two, it's some kind of government involved deal to where they don't want the American people to lose faith in the government, even though it happened, 60 years ago, almost 60 years ago now. It's one of the two things. I mean, you can't convince me. I mean, that's just common sense. But this JFK Revisited will get you cranked up. And when you told me that yesterday, I just found that so. Your dad one was there. You see him. He's in every picture that's ever taken, and arguably the most famous photograph ever taken in this country.
Possibly, yes.
I mean, it could. I mean,
we've actually traveled there as a family to go see that picture.
Yeah, and the interesting thing, I was going to ask you this because this part I don't. There's so many things that you still don't know. But did the bullet go through Lee Harvey? Stay in him? Because your dad was like literally right behind the gun. Like if you drew it
through, it would have hit my dad. He was absolutely.
He was in line.
He was in the line, which I don't think it went through. Mom never really talked about that. She did talk at one point about when my dad passed away when we were 5 years old. So that was about 75 or so. Yeah. He passed away of cirrhosis of the liver. And by the way, I told you this yesterday. There was quite a few folks that passed away of strange things fairly quickly after that assassination that were friends connected to my father, connected to our family in some way, shape, or form. I think that's why we were always told that maybe there was only one shooter. That was it. There was a gentleman, a group of gentlemen that came and saw my mother after my dad passed away. And she didn't tell me this until a number of years later. That she had a visit, because I said, "Hey man, is there anything that?" Because she never talked about any of that. She's like, "Yeah, there was a group that came and visited me after your dad passed away," but that's all she would say. I mean, I'm convinced.
So she never told you what they came about.
That's all she would say. I mean, no matter how much I tried to prod her or push her, she would just say, "All you need to know is there was just one shooter."
Yeah, and look, I know. There's gonna be some people that probably turn off the podcast right now. We're probably gonna have a bunch of them just like they're geeked out like about this. All right, so like if you look at the I guess the latest what they came up with and everything, is you see like we all know about the magic bullet, okay? That went through the magic bullet. Shots hit the president, and allegedly. Is a great word that we learn here. If you're a football coach and recruiting, allegedly is a great word. Okay, so allegedly, I'm not really worried about getting sued, like people in like black ties and stuff showing up and coming to get me. All right, so but allegedly, if you the two shots were that close, shot that you can, because it's been well documented that like it's basically deemed impossible. But the first shot didn't even miss the car. It missed the street. So there's documentation that and so they're saying like this, that he was able to hit two on target and a moving target. But that one shot he missed, he didn't just miss the car, he missed the street. I mean, he shot like he was 70 yards off where he was aiming. But obviously when the Zapruder, you go back and watch, because I did my homework last night. You go back and like, think about like the Zapruder film wasn't released till like 12 years later and then the conspiracy theories with the autopsy photos, who did the autopsy, And then the one that I didn't realize until I had watched the movie, that how there were other people very similar to Lee Harvey Oswald that the government had placed allegedly in Chicago, and like was going and doing these parade routes, had in working in buildings. I think Chicago was one, and there was another city that they were placing to whatever they decided to do it. And so, and there's so many thoughts and things about whether it was the CIA, the FBI, President Johnson was involved or whoever, but it is a very, I encourage everybody to go watch JFK Revisited. But I know how about like when you studied it? Okay, so you're in high school or you're in college and you studied that. Know your connection to that?
Most people did. Yeah, most people did. I mean, it came up in conversation quite a bit with our friends, and then it kind of flew around. But um, I just always thought just the trajectory, the way that that film portrays where he is hit and where it just doesn't. Something's up to me, and I'm like you. I don't need anybody coming to my house or talking to me about anything.
Yeah, they're going to come to your house before they're going to come to my house. They'll come to mine in a second.
And they're going to get one answer. My mom trained me.
Yeah, they get one answer. I'm with you on that.
And you said one word. I didn't study it. We didn't. She just didn't allow it.
What's that?
We didn't study this. Like we didn't. Like when I tell you that you know more about it than I do, I'm not kidding. Because it was in our household, we didn't talk about it like that. It was only that my dad's in this picture with my friends, and that was all pretty cool, and that was about where it stopped. Pretty interesting.
I mean, literally, like if the good Lord came down and said, "Hey, you can get to ask one question," if the good Lord, when I go to the pearly gates, and He says I can ask one question, and if I want to know one thing, that's probably the question I'm going to ask. If He gives me that choice, if He says, "Hey, you can ask one question. What do you want to know?" I want to know. I would want to know. I don't know why. I joke. We have. I'm here about aliens and messing with ghosts and all that stuff. But to me, the most, because it's been that, from literally since I was a little kid. It's just something that's through time. That's something that's it's just interested me so much. And I'm a history guy, which a lot of people don't know, but I'm a big history buff, and so that's just something that stuck with me. My wife, it drives her crazy because I'm the guy that's like late at night when there's nothing on TV. I'll look for a documentary on Amazon, so she doesn't.
I will give you one nugget. My mother did tell me this one time that she said that because I asked, I said, "Look, did he say anything about what was said? When they were, what happened?" I was trying to get her to explain to me what happened with him. Like, was he actually involved in touching him, putting him on the gurney and all that stuff? She said that he did tell her that one of the officers was saying, "Did you kill the president?" And he heard John or Lee Harvey Oswald say, like, "This guy's shot, right? And it's in his stomach and all that stuff, and he's in pain." And he heard him say, "Go to hell." That was it. That's the last thing that they heard him say. So, which, I mean, that's not a whole lot, but pretty interesting if they were asking that, and he's shot in the stomach, he's writhing in pain, and that's what he says.
Yeah, I like, and the thing that you just want to, at this point in time, I mean, we're what 59 years out from this happening. This year will be 59 years, 58 and change right now. But I don't understand how are we? I mean, it's 58 years ago, man. I mean, the secrecy of the documents and withholding the stuff, like there's a reason. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, what is it? I mean, maybe I just want some time in my life. I got home last night and I was so geeked up. I told a friend of mine, I know he's a history guy. He was fired up, and I told my wife, my kids, and so my son, my 14-year-old, had watched it with me, JFK Revisited. And I, went to the whole history lesson with him and all that stuff. But just, the way that your mind change, like one little piece of it, the most interesting thing is how one little piece of information can change your whole perception on what you think happened.
Right.
Like
I'll tell you, reading my dad's interview in the Warren Report, that was pretty polarizing for me. It made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. It actually became real when I actually saw that interview on the Warren.
How old were you when you read that for the first time?
I bet I was in my 20s. I mean, like I told you, we really, it was never discussed around our family. We did not talk about it. It was, and because of that, we never even thought to ask about it, to be quite honest with you. We just didn't. And if it ever got started, my mom was very good about shutting it down for some reason. But reading the Roaring Report, just how detailed it was. And I mean, we're talking about 58, 59 years ago, like you said, how they conducted the interviews and things that I don't know if you read my dad's report at all. I mean,
I don't like, look, people that know me, David, I don't like to read. Okay. I watch a movie, I'll watch TV, I'll listen to a storybook. I don't like to read. I read every word of that thing yesterday. It took me like 45 minutes. It was a long report.
it is crazy, man. And I mean, he was
I read it.
probably a very small part of that, but can you imagine what those other documents are showing of people that actually were in the know? So pretty interesting.
Have you ever read the transcript of his interview with the FBI before in December?
I don't think
Your
I've read
dad's?
that. Is that somewhere out there? I need to go check.
I don't know. I read and to catch people up. I'll probably need to get when we post this. I'll send the link to Raquel. Maybe she can post it on Twitter. The link to your dad's Warren Commission. It's very interesting, by the way. But the in the Warren Commission interview, they keep talking about they kept him on timelines and things like that. And then he had done I believe the interview that your dad did with the Warren Commission was in it was March. I got a pretty good memory sometimes. March 26th of 1964. Okay. And your dad about a timeline and things like that. And they mentioned the two FBI agents, but he did an interview. The FBI interviewed him in December. So relatively quickly after the assassination.
Right.
And so a couple months had passed and they were asking almost, I got the feel, maybe, did you get the feel that like the Warren Commission was almost trying to trip him up on some things to try to confuse him on his timeline? Did you get that vibe out of that?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's where my ears started perking, because you can tell by the line of questioning that they're asking your dad that they're trying to trip him up and basically discredit his testimony, to the Warren, the FBI in December.
Right.
So
the thing that's interesting for me is when it's your family member, your dad. As I read the Warren Commission report, I could picture him sitting in that interview room, because it's so closely related. That's what I think polarized it to me. I could hear him speaking, and I could, he's just a very laid back guy, and you could tell by some of his answers that he was just, I mean, he wasn't like high up in the police department. He was just kind of a doer guy, and you could tell kind of in that interview that he wasn't, he's not, a leader of the department or anything, but they were trying to trip him up. But I could hear him speaking when I was reading it. Your listeners are probably clicking us off as we speak.
Hey, no, they're not. They're probably digging this. This is interesting. This is probably. I mean, I was like extremely fascinated. That was amazing. But you're right. The best part was really at the beginning of the interview. Your dad said, "Present." He goes, "What the hell I need an attorney for?"
That's right.
And I could see that. I was like, that's what I would have said. What the hell I need an attorney for? And they were like, well, this and sometimes this and this. And he's like, no, only one. So let's go. And so I could, and then it got, there were a couple, I don't know if you had questions that were redacted in your dad's deal. Like they had your dad where it was saying he was saying something, but there was nothing said, on some things. So I hope one day, that would be cool. Like one day documents that actually says what your dad actually said in those things that they took out and have not published yet. So
I want to say it might have been some names of some people that were protected. That's why it was redacted, but I can't.
Yeah, I got you. Well, that's probably, no kidding. All right. So do you, I guess I can ask you, or you're going to tell me the same thing, but do you believe there was one shooter?
Man, I mean, in honor of my late mother, there was only one shooter, baby.
Only one shooter. Okay. We'll let you, we'll go the official David Beaty podcast opinion on the conspiracy. I think there was at least one in front. At least one. All of my deals I've ever done, there's at least I mean, I know how physics works. I am a math guy. People don't know that either. I'm a history and math guy. I know how physics works, and I know when you shoot a deer or you shoot an animal with an interest. It's like I am just redneck to know that. So I have a doctorate. I didn't know if you know this. So I graduated and with a bachelor's in sports and fitness management from Troy. I have a master's of education from Northwestern State, and I have a doctorate in common sense. People don't know that. I have a doctorate in common sense. And so
I'm
my
right there
doc
with
with using all of my education and my doctorate of common sense, I'm not. I mean, there's at least one coming from the front. So, well, they won't admit that because that would call it a conspiracy if there was more than three shots. So
you.
that's where we're at. So
This is true.
59, 58 and a half years later, that's where we're at. So
I can't wait for all these documents to become public. Put it that
there's so many of them. They could probably release them all. It'd take them a year to figure out what happened.
way.
This was I mean, it was on a deep level. I mean, it's I mean, have you watched the JFK Revisited? Have you seen that yet?
I haven't, but I'm going to watch it now.
Yeah, it's good. There's a lot of things in there that wasn't in the that it's really based on the information that has come out basically since the last time. So it's
Right.
you learn a lot and it starts changing your mind again. So that's one of the deals. Man, look, I appreciate the hell out of you, man. I mean, I know we gave us all the time in the world today. It has been a complete blast. I left out because I wanted to get to the JFK stuff, so I left out all kinds of good stuff. We didn't talk about aliens or any of that good stuff or NASCAR we were going to talk about. I'll have you back on another time. I mean, I love having good dudes on here. And again, I want to thank you on behalf of all the coaches for everything you've done, whether you realize it or not, how you've impacted the profession in a positive way. And I know we're all thankful from a coach's standpoint. And I look forward and can't wait to get you back on again sometime.
Oh, Tyler, I thank you so much, man. Man, I thank you for doing what you're doing. Man, I just love coaching and I love coaches, and what you're doing here is awesome. I mean, you're giving an old ball coach a chance to talk a little ball, which has been fun, and then getting to hear your stories have been outstanding as well. So, man, I'd love to do it again sometime. I know you got a lot more polarizing guests than I do,
No,
but man,
just me.
listen, I really appreciate it a bunch, and I'm looking forward to maybe doing it again sometime, man.
We need to go live show to where we go to Dealey Plaza and you and I can sit there and solve the mystery. Nobody else can solve. Me and you can solve it. What do you think?
There you go. We'll do
We can
that.
do it. I love it. All right. Appreciate you, Coach.
You bet, man.